from Textbook 1, Styling the Navigation. Now that we've set in some interactivity into our links all over the page, we specifically want to address the way that the main navigation looks for our website. So let's go ahead and go in and use some things to style our unordered list. Let's take the bullets away from an unordered list. So let's go into our code and we'll go to our styles in the head of our document. And under the rule for the image tag, let's write one for our unordered list. UL space curly braces. And we're going to write list dash style dash type colon, give it a space, none. And let's save that and let's go look what that does to our page. And it should make the bullets go away. And it does. So we're starting to make that look a little bit more professional. Next thing we want to do is we want to add some code that zeroes out the margin and the padding. You notice since it's an unordered list, it's pushed over a little bit to the right. We don't want that there when we add our other styles. So let's go zero out the margin and zero out the padding for our unordered list. Back to our rule that we wrote for the UL for unordered list. Margin colon 0 semicolon and padding colon 0 semicolon. Let's check that. Back to the browser. That's just going to make it easier for us to style this list with other rules when we get to those. Let's do this now. Let's create another rule that makes it into a horizontal group of links that goes across instead of a vertical group that goes up and down. So we're going to do that by addressing our list item. We're going to have to write a new rule for that in our styles. Back to text edit, and under the UL we're going to create a new style rule for the list item, the LI. Curly braces, and then we're going to go display colon inline. And that'll make a horizontal navigation for us. While we're here, we're going to spread out our navigation a little bit between each other by going margin right and adding 20 pixels. That will push each of the links away from each other by about 20 pixels on the right side. So margin dash right colon 20 px semicolon. Let's save that and see what happens in our browser. So now we have some horizontal navigation with some of the interactivity. Let's use some Descendant selectors to actually customize that interactivity a little bit more. So we're going to write some Descendant selectors that work on only the UL and the LI that are associated in the nav area. That way, if we have another unordered list on the page, they will not use these same styles. These styles will only work for the unordered list and list items that are located in our nav area of the page. So the way we do that is we simply go back up to our text editor. And I want to show you something before we code this. You notice that this unordered list is nested inside an opening nav tag and a closing nav tag. That's how we're going to use the Descendant selectors to target only this unordered list. That way, if we did have a second unordered list on the page, these rules would not apply to that and would not make that unordered list into some type of navigation. So let's go back up to our tags that we just added, and we're just going to add the Descendant selectors of nav in front of UL, nav in front of li. While we're at it though, let's clean up our code and move these rules that are associated with our nav to the other rules associated with the nav. So I'm just going to select all of these, edit cut, find where our other style rule for the nav is up here. Where's that rule? It's right here. And I just want to group all of my style rules for my nav in the same area so they're easier to find. Clean that up a little bit. Save that and just check our browser to be sure everything's still working okay. No big changes and the nav is still working, so we're good there. So let's write some more descendant selectors to customize the links specifically in this nav area. So we're going to go back to our text editor, and under the nav li we're going to do a rule for the active links. So we're going to go nav space a, give it a space, do your curly braces, and we're going to write some code to customize this link. We're going to go font size 13 pixels to make it a little bigger. Do another declaration that's going to set the color to all 6s. Don't forget the hashtag for our hex color. And we're going to write another rule for uppercase. So let's do a declaration for text-transform uppercase to make them all uppercase. Text-transform . And let's go test that. Save this. And they got bigger and they went gray and they're now all uppercase. That yellow looks a little weird, so let's write another rule for the hover state. So right under the nav A, we're going to write a new CSS rule for nav A hover. Let's do it right under that one. Punch in there. And it'll be nav space A colon hover. Give that a space and put your curly braces in. In our first declaration, we're going to tell it to change color. Give that a space, and it's 13A AD7. And don't forget the hashtag in front. Another declaration we'll write in that same rule will be for text decoration none. All right, let's save that and check it out in the browser. Now notice there's no underline because text decoration none. Instead of yellow, it's a more aesthetically pleasing blue. So let's add some padding. This is really, really close to the wall a little bit. So let's add some padding to this. We're going to go back to our nav A rule on the style sheet. So we'll go back to nav A, and under text transform uppercase, we'll just add padding in. If we're only adding one number for the padding, that's going to add it to top, bottom, right, and left all at the same time. We're going to add 10 pixels in there. Save that, check it in our browser. So that gives us a little more breathing room away from the left wall of the design and between our different navigation links. What that didn't do though is if you're using padding and there's inline, it only adds it to the left and right. It doesn't add any vertical spacing. So we need to add one more thing. We need to add a display inline block so that the padding would actually take place in a block level element so that the top and bottom will also receive that 10 pixels of padding. So we're going to go back to our nav A rule. Display. It'll do the inline dash block. That means it'll spread it out horizontally like it normally is, but then the block will allow us to have vertical padding on our element. Check that. And you see the top and bottom got a little bit more space on there between the image and the navigation and that horizontal rule in the navigation. Last thing we want to do is we want to spread a couple of things out. We want to spread out the navigation from the image a little bit more by adding margin to the bottom of the nav container. So we're going to come back in to our CSS and we're going to find our nav, margin bottom 30 pixels. Actually, they want us to close that space up a little bit to change the 30 pixels to 10. They want us to reduce the space a little. So we'll save that. Check the browser. And that got the image a little bit closer to our navigation. And they want to do the same with the bottom of the header, which is right there. They want to close in this white space between the navigation and this horizontal rule. So we'll go back to our styles. And we'll go margin bottom instead of 30, we'll change that to 10. And save that. Check it in the browser. And that tightens up our navigation and the elements around it a little bit.